Good morning, everybody, and it's Tuesday morning, and welcome to Penn Vicarage. Lovely to see you, and thank you for being with us as we continue our work through the book of Proverbs. Today we are in chapter 11, so let's get straight stuck into it. Lots of wisdom here. Proverbs chapter 11, here goes. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but an accurate weight is his delight. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but wisdom is with the humble. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. The righteousness of the blameless keeps their way straight, but the wicked fall by their own wickedness. The righteousness of the upright saves them, but the treacherous are taken captive by their schemes. When the wicked die, their hope perishes, and the expectation of the godless comes to nothing. The righteous are delivered from trouble, and the wicked get into it instead. With their mouths the godless would destroy their neighbours, but by knowledge the righteous are delivered. When it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices, and when the wicked perish, there's jubilation. By the blessing of the upright, a city is exalted, but it's overthrown by the mouth of the wicked. Whoever belittles another lacks sense, but an intelligent person remains silent. A gossip goes around telling secrets, but one who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a confidence. Where there's no guidance, a nation falls, but in an abundance of counsellors there is safety. To guarantee loans for a stranger brings trouble, but there's safety in refusing to do so. A gracious woman gets honour, but she who hates virtue is covered with shame. The timid become destitute, but the aggressive gain riches. Those who are kind reward themselves, but the cruel do themselves harm. The wicked earn no real gain, but those who sow righteousness get a true reward. Whoever is steadfast in righteousness will live, but whoever pursues evil will die. Crooked minds are an abomination to the Lord, but those of blameless ways are his delight. Be assured, the wicked will not go unpunished, but those who are righteous will escape. Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without good sense. The desire of the righteous ends only in good, the expectation of the wicked in wrath. Some give freely, yet grow in all the richer. Others withhold what is due and only suffer want. A generous person will be enriched. One who gives water will get water. The people curse those who hold back grain, but a blessing is on the head of those who sell it. Whoever diligently seeks good seeks favour, but evil comes to the one who searches for it. Those who trust in their riches will wither, but the righteous will flourish like green leaves. Those who trouble their households will inherit wind, and the fool will be servant to the wise. The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, but violence takes lives away. If the righteous are repaid on earth, how much more will the wicked and the sinner? And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, so here we have 31 verses of quick-fire verses pretty much all about the wise and the foolish. And the quick-fire, staccato, almost each verse was almost a sort of story on its own, really. And as there's so many, as there's 31 of them, it makes it quite difficult to commentate on, really, even though the intelligence, but I shall give it my best shot. What you really need to be honest, is you need to look at these things at your leisure. But there are just a few things to say. Firstly, a theme which comes through all the way through, from beginning to end, like a message through the middle of a stick of rock, is that living righteously, living God's way, leads to good, and leads to life in its fullness, and lives. Whereas foolishness leads to trouble, it leads to insecurity, and it leads to death. So essentially, the main chapter, the thrust of the chapter, again and again and again, I could pick up verse after verse. Here we go. The fruit of the righteous is the tree of life, but violence takes lives away. Things like that again and again and again. If the righteous are repaid on earth, how much more the wicked and the sinner? So you clearly see here what the chapter is saying is that behaving God's way, behaving well, leads to good. It leads to life being lived to the full, and as living life in a foolish way goes the other way to trouble and ultimately to death. But as I say, there are just one or two just to pick out, if I may. Firstly, in verse 1, there's the importance of simply of being honest. It talks about the Lord despising bad weights. So when things were traded in a market, you had a certain weight, either you pay this much for this much type of thing. If the weights were not right, then in a sense it was dishonest trading. So the importance, he's verse 1, he talks about the importance of just a straightforward honesty, of paying people what is due and being honest and straightforward in business. And it's really, really important that we do that. That's the first thing. So verse 1, it talks again to us about the importance of being honest, about being straightforward and transparent. And as Christians, we need to be honest and straightforward. We need to be honest in our businesses, and straightforward in what we do, so people think well of us. But it's just a good thing to do anyway. Verse 2 talks about pride, as opposed to being humble. Now, pride here, the Hebrew word apparently implies to somebody boiling over, and basically it means here somebody who always insists on getting their own way. So Pharaoh in the book of Exodus, for example, is described as being for this kind of pride, an arrogant stubbornness that thinks I know it all and I insist on getting my own way all the time. And that's the kind of foolishness that he's talking about. That, and I can have to say, I'm afraid you see it in church actually. Much as anywhere else, you see people who insist on things always being done my way. I'll do it my way, and I insist that they always get what they want at meetings, and so on and so on and so on. When verse 2 says, when pride comes, then comes disgrace, but wisdom is with the humble. And the word humble here is like if you want to check out one of the loveliest verses in the Bible, Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And humble doesn't mean groveling all the time. It means remembering that God is God and we are humans in comparison. So it's about living humbly with God. And again, Proverbs here talks about living here in verse 3, verse 2 talks about the importance of living humbly, living life alongside God and remembering just who God is. Then one of the things, if I may, verse 7, it's unusual, verse 7, it says, when the wicked die, their hope perishes. And the expectation of the godless comes to nothing. It's one of the rare occasions in the book of Proverbs when it refers obliquely, anyway, to life after death. Generally speaking, what Proverbs is talking about is, we get the rewards in this life. And very rarely does Proverbs refer to anything beyond death. But in verse 7, Solomon does. So when the wicked die, their hope perishes. There's an implication here about something that happens after death. And I think, again, we need to remind ourselves that as in the Christian life, that we are dealing with to this world, but also to beyond as well. That we deal just not with what's just on us, but we deal with the eternal too. So when we talk about giving eternal life, we're not just talking about good things in this world. Actually, we're talking about good for eternity, for heaven as well. So verse 7 here is one of the rare occasions when Proverbs refers to anything to do with life after death, but that is implied in it as well too. Verse 14 picks up a little bit up about the, as opposed to the proud. It says, where there is no guidance, a nation falls, but in an abundance of counselors there is safety. This goes, sorry, frog in the throat. This reminds us really of, as I often say, that one of the greatest gifts God has given to us is each other. That we don't have to make all our decisions on our own, which we do sometimes. But actually, God's given us each other, what people we can talk to. And so it's important that when we make big decisions in life that we talk to people about it, talk it over with them. As I say, God's given us each other, and that's a tremendous and amazing gift. And so there's something really important about the importance of abundance of counsellors, the importance of getting advice from other people. Then in verse 16, there's a strange little bit in verse 16 as well. A gracious woman gets honour, but she who hates virtue is covered in shame. The timid become destitute, but the aggressive gain riches. That last phrase at the end, almost, it sounds a bit countercultural in the book of Proverbs. And again, I think what this reminds us really is the importance of going for it with God. In the book of Timothy, Paul says to Timothy, God has not given us a spirit of timidity, but of power and of love and of self-control. There is power in the name of Jesus. And I think so often in our Christian life, we're tendency to roll over too quickly. And we're almost too pleased to give up. Sometimes it feels like it, and we give way and so on. So you balance it against what we're saying about pride, but I think there is something important here about so the timid becoming destitute. Actually, as Christians, we shouldn't be timid in our Christian faith. We should be full of God and full of living life God's way as well too. And then finally in verse 17, there's a reminder, as I said yesterday, that actually we're constantly reminded in this chapter about the difference between the wise and the foolish, the right and the wrong. But actually, when we do behave wisely, this isn't just about saying do good for everybody else or do good for the world or do good for your family. It's actually saying that the biggest rewards of wickedness, of good and evil, come to ourselves. That actually, if we behave well, if we act and live in a wise way, then we ourselves will be blessed. It's not just about doing our duty; it's about getting blessed ourselves. And if we behave bad, if we behave unwisely and foolishly and horribly too, then in a sense the biggest losers will be ourselves. So, my friends, lots to think about. Do have them. I mean, there's 31 verses, and they're all different. And have a look at them at your own leisure. You'll get the picture. And it's difficult to commentate on because they're all different. I'll take you 31 different talks. But look at them again at your leisure. Enjoy them, and God bless you. Thank you for watching. As I always say, do please share this message with your friends. Have a lovely day. Thanks so much.